I'm in the Cerrado, this sort of savannah area, a huge savannah area in Brazil. It's massively important for biodiversity, but it's also become very important for the agribusiness. Huge plantations, lots of cattle farming. And the two things, the ecology and the big business, are coming up against each other. We're going to look at what sort of impacts that's having and why it's important for all of the world.
The Cerrado is a vast biome. It covers over 2 million square kilometres, a quarter of Brazil's landmass, and half of its natural vegetation has already been destroyed. This should be an international scandal, but the Cerrado is not well known outside of Brazil, so let's get a brief introduction.
Yeah, the Cerrado is a very old vegetation that we have in the center of Brazil. It has like 22 million hectares of extent and connects different regions and biomes in Brazil, such as the Amazon and the Atlantic forest. It's a very rich biome that has encompassed 5% of the world biodiversity.
So it's important for its plants, insects, mammals and birds, but also for its water. The water isn't always as spectacularly visible as here. Much of it's hidden. The Cerrado acts like a giant sponge, absorbing and storing vast amounts of water in huge underground aquifers, and then sending the water to much of the rest of the country.
Yeah, this region is where 40% of the water of Brazil comes from. It's very important to different regions because the Cerrado connects with different biomes. So the water here contributes to the Amazon basin, to the basin of São Francisco, that is a very important river in the northeast, and for basins in the south as well.
The landscape maybe doesn't have the easy allure of the Amazon rainforest. It's a vast area of scrubby bushes, gnarled tree trunks and spreading arms of branches. It seems so impenetrable to early settlers that the name Cerrado comes from the Portuguese word for closed. But just like the water, its riches lay hidden in its root system. It's been called an inverted forest.
An inverted forest it means that 2/3 of the biomass of what you see behind me is below ground. It goes in deep roots 30 meters down to reach water deep in the soil.
And so although we don't necessarily see all the trees, what we're losing when we destroy the Cerrado is a really important carbon sink.
Oh, the total amount of carbon of this ecosystem is equivalent to the rainforests and the Amazon. So the total amount of carbon that is lost is equivalent to burning rainforests.
Of course, the Cerrado is not just important for biodiversity, for the climate situation, for plants, for animals. It's also hugely important for people. There are people who depend on an intact ecosystem in the Cerrado. We're going to go and meet some of them.
The Cerrado is dotted with small-scale farms, such as this one where Maria and her friend Irena make a living from the natural environment.
Para mim, o Cerrado significa é vida.
For me, Cerrado is life, is joy and it's health.
But the big farms are getting ever closer, and Maria and Irena's lives feel ever more precarious as the Cerrado shrinks. What will she lose if this ecosystem is taken away from her?
A gente perde sim muita coisa, né?
So we're going to lose everything. I make products from the Cerrado. I live from the Cerrado. We have mangaba, we have cagaita, we have araticum. So we end up losing everything that I showed you, all the products. So we have jams, we have spreads, we have syrups. This is where I get my livelihood from. So if we lose the Cerrado, I lose everything.
It's a real threat. The deforestation and conversion to agriculture continues in the Cerrado at a dizzying pace. Over the course of the past 10 years, the Cerrado has lost more than 90,000 square kilometres of natural vegetation. That's an area larger than Austria. The savannah is being replaced with giant monocultures. Much of it soy, and much of that exported to Europe for animal feed. And the local inhabitants are feeling the impact, says Martin Meyer, an Austrian who's lived in the region for 30 years and runs an NGO supporting local people.
Es bedeutet vor allem, dass sie wissen, warum ihre Flüsse, ihre Bäche immer weniger Wasser führen, warum viele Quellen versiegen. Der Wasserkreislauf der Region ist immer stärker durcheinander gebracht. Das Regenwasser fällt auf diese Böden, auf diese nackten Böden, die viel härter sind. Das Regenwasser dringt dadurch nicht ein und speist nicht mehr den ganz wichtigen Untererdspiegel des Wassers, Uruguay. Dadurch in den Quellgebieten dringt auch weniger Wasser von unten wieder auf die Oberfläche. Die Flüsse werden dadurch immer schwächer.
The local communities, those who have lived in the Cerrado for generations, then face problems using the water that's left after the irrigation.
They have a problem of accessing the rivers because big farmers do not allow them to get there and to take water or to fish for food. And many times the water is contaminated, so it causes diseases in the local population.
The water is poisoned by pesticides which are sometimes spread by aeroplanes, allowing the poison to spread over villages, into their gardens, into their houses. But Anna is convinced that the best way to protect the Cerrado's ecology is to protect the local communities who've lived sustainably for so long here.
Because the local people are here for several generations, they know how to manage the native vegetation and they use it for their food, medicine, for their livelihoods. So they protect the Cerrado. It's completely different than the big farmers that plant just one single species, soy or cotton, and just for exports.
The town of Luis Eduardo Magalhães is the centre of the agribusiness industry. It looks a bit dystopic, but is this huge-scale agriculture a necessary evil? After all, Brazil is a hungry country in a hungry world. We need food.
Hunger problem is not a problem of lack of food. I think we have to distribute it better and to use better. These fields that produce soy goes to produce fiber, to produce other products that are not food, or it's exported to Europe, to China, to feed animals that then will feed the humans. And we know that a diet with an excess of meat protein is not healthy.